Welcome back to another universe, where we dig into the worlds, connections, and hidden details that most people miss. Today, we are heading back to one of horror's most cursed towns, Derry, Maine, to break down the first episode of It, Welcome to Derry. This pilot episode is absolutely packed, not just with nods to IT Chapters 1 and 2, but with deep references to Stephen King's broader universe, from The Shining to Dreamcatcher, and even some subtle clues that could connect multiple King stories into one shared cinematic world. Before we get into it, fair warning, I'll be talking about the films, the book, and the new series. So if you want to go in completely blind, now's your cue to bail. For everyone else, let's get into it. So, Welcome to Derry takes us 27 years before the Losers Club first faced Pennywise. We're still in the same timeline as the films, but this story takes place during the early 1960s, the era when the evil first begins to stir again. As fans already know, it isn't just a clown, it's a cosmic entity, a shape-shifting being that crash-landed on Earth millions of years ago. Every 27 years, it awakens from its slumber to feed, not just on flesh, but on fear itself. Children are easier targets because their imaginations make their terror that much more potent. This pilot doesn't just remind us of that cycle, it sets the tone for the entire series. The way its evil seeps into every corner of Derry, even when it's asleep. And speaking of tone, the title of the episode, The Pilot, is a clever double meaning. Yes, it's the pilot episode of the series, but it's also named after our main character, Leroy Hanlon, an Air Force pilot. The story opens inside a movie theater showing The Music Man, which actually came out in 1962, placing us firmly in this era. This isn't a random choice. The Music Man is about a con artist who pretends to be a music professor, scamming small-town folks into buying instruments for a band that never forms. A charming liar who deceives people, especially children, for personal gain. Yeah, that sounds exactly like Pennywise. But here's the genius part. During the film, you can hear the main character Harold Hill warn. Mothers of River City, heed that warning before it's too late. Watch for the telltale signs of corruption that line practically echoes the central message of IT itself. Adults ignoring the corruption growing right under their noses, while children suffer the consequences. And since The Music Man was produced by Warner Brothers, who also own IT and this new series, the filmmakers didn't need to jump through hoops for rights. They used it perfectly to foreshadow the darkness beneath Derry's cheerful facade. Now we meet Maddie Clemens, a young boy who sneaks into the theater. Hank, the usher, mentions that Maddie comes from a rough home. And that detail is crucial. Maddie's clinging to a pacifier, which isn't just odd for his age, it's symbolic. It shows trauma, emotional neglect, and regression. That pacifier is his way of coping with the love and safety he never got. When Maddie bolts from the cruel usher, who represents the heartless indifference of Derry's adults, we see how rot has infected this town. Its evil doesn't just lurk in the sewers. It radiates through people, dulling empathy and amplifying cruelty. As Maddie leaves town, he passes a Welcome to Derry sign featuring Paul Bunyan, a direct setup for the giant Paul Bunyan statue we'll later see in IT. Chapter 2. In a newspaper, we even see mention that this statue is currently being built, connecting the timelines beautifully. Also, note the Legion of White Decency logo on a nearby billboard. That's the same white supremacist group from the IT novel who burned down the Black Spot, a nightclub for black soldiers, an event we'll definitely see later in this series. Maddie is soon picked up by what looks like a friendly, ordinary family, but that overly wholesome tone? Immediately unsettling. The car radio talks about nuclear tests in Moscow, warning about radiation and mutations. A perfect setup for the mutated winged baby we'll soon see. The kids in the back seat, Arlene and Ray, seem off. When Ray spells Willies, Arlene cuts in mid-word. He resumes spelling Lies. Lies. A brilliant Easter egg. A literal spelling of Maddie's situation. He's being deceived. The mother calls her daughter a harlot, the father reminisces darkly. And then, without turning, the car somehow loops right back into Derry. This loop visually represents the cyclical nature of its curse. No one truly escapes Derry. Then comes the truly horrific moment. the mother's stomach balloons grotesquely, and she gives birth to a winged mutated baby. This is a direct callback to its many forms. Pennywise might be the most famous, but it manifests as whatever its victim fears most. For Maddie, the monster is tied to his infant trauma, his yearning to fly away from home, twisted into a nightmare of wings and flesh. It's also tied to 1960s fears of nuclear mutation echoing the radio broadcast. This creature even appears in King's novel, in one of Mike Hanlon's grandfather's recollections, where locals see a leathery winged baby flying over the Kitchener Ironworks, another tragic Derry landmark. Moments later, Maddie is gone, taken by it. His pacifier drifts down the sewer drain, just like Georgie's paper boat. The water imagery isn't just aesthetic. In IT and in Stephen King's writing in general, water represents corruption, reflection, and transformation. It's formless. Just like it, it fills whatever it touches. Water also always finds the lowest point, symbolically falling from grace, descending underground, straight into the sewers. A physical version of hell beneath Derry. We then shift to a wide shot of 1960s Derry, where young Phil watches planes fly overhead. His watch? A Tom Corbett Space Cadet wristwatch, another perfect period detail. Here we meet Leroy Hanlon, grandfather of Losers Club member Mike Hanlon. This character connects directly to the larger IT lore, and he's portrayed by Chris Chalk, confirmed to be playing Dick Halloran, the same psychic cook from The Shining. This is massive. In King's novel, Dick Halloran was a member of the Black Spot nightclub and witnessed its burning by the White Legion. Using his shine, that psychic sensitivity, he saved lives that night. The same shine that helped him later sense the evil at the Overlook Hotel. This means Welcome to Derry is officially merging the timelines of IT and The Shining, establishing that the shine might be the only real force that can see and oppose its cosmic evil. On the military base, someone mentions special projects. This line is small but huge. In other King works like Firestarter, The Mist, and Dreamcatcher, those projects refer to secret government operations studying alien or supernatural phenomena, often going terribly wrong. That ties directly into its origin as an extraterrestrial entity that infects human minds. Some fans believe it and Mr. Grey from Dreamcatcher are the same being. And since Warner Brothers owns both properties, we might just be seeing the early stages of a shared Stephen King universe, something fans have speculated about for decades. Outside the school, a sign mentions Bert the Turtle, and inside, there's a mascot and duck and cover signs from Cold War campaigns. That's not random either. The turtle refers to Maturin, the cosmic turtle and polar opposite of it. In King's mythology, Maturin and it are the two primordial forces of creation. Maturin brings life, it consumes it. Later, we even see Lily clutching a small turtle charm, a gift from Maddie. It's a symbol of protection, and maybe hope, suggesting that goodness still exists, even in Derry. In the hangar scene, Airman Masters refuses to salute Hanlon, a blunt reminder of Derry's racism, another evil magnified by its influence. This mirrors the Losers Club's trauma years later. Every child chosen by it is already wounded in some way. Lily, for example, lost her father in a factory accident. She's viewed as unstable after spending time in Juniper Hill, a psychiatric hospital that appears throughout King's universe, including at Chapter 2, where Henry Bowers is committed after murdering his father. Then we hear the voices of children coming from the pipes, one of Derry's most chilling motifs. Almost every child knows those whispers, yet no one truly listens. Adults in Derry are hypnotized by complacency, willfully blind to the horrors beneath them. That's its greatest weapon. It doesn't just feed on people, it controls them through ignorance. We see strong parallels between Lily and Beverly Marsh here, both facing it through their bathroom drains, both dealing with trauma and disbelief from adults. These mirrored experiences remind us that Derry's curse repeats every generation. Even Ted, a young Jewish boy preparing for his bar mitzvah, mirrors Stan Uris from the Losers Club. But this series takes a darker twist. By the end of the episode, 3 of the 5 kids we've met are dead, leaving only Lily and Ronnie alive. At one point, Ted reads a Batman and Robin comic featuring Clayface, a shapeshifter villain. The cover literally reads, Batman and Robin defy the menace of Clayface. Clayface's powers, morphing into anything, directly parallel Pennywise's shape-shifting. And fun fact, the same day this episode dropped, James Gunn posted that exact comic cover on Instagram, celebrating Clayface's anniversary, teasing the same themes. Since Gunn and Warner Brothers oversee both DC and IT, welcome to Derry. This crossover Easter egg feels intentional, a subtle nod to shared creative DNA. Then comes one of the episode's most disturbing sequences, the skin lamp scene. Ted has just learned about how Nazis supposedly made lampshades from human skin, and moments later, his fear becomes reality. It manifests that terror in front of him, a perfect example of how it weaponizes trauma and transforms historical horror into personal nightmares. Later, in a conversation between Shaw and Hanlon, Shaw says, "The proudest moment of his life was when I signed up to be a doughboy." That's a World War I reference, grounding Hanlon's family history in generations of service, and connecting back to the soldiers at the Black Spot nightclub. Meanwhile, we see the kids regroup in the Derry Public Library using an old microfilm reader, a nostalgic callback to how the Losers Club did their own research decades later.